All right. We just hit the go live button. I'm excited again as ever. We are back a couple weeks later, and would you know it, the AI psychosis hasn't stopped. There's still plenty of things to go over, and things just keep coming up because, we just really haven't learned anything in the last 2 weeks to really solve any of these problems that we brought up. But I think that for this show, this AI Psychosis show, thank you everybody for joining and live streaming and watching later. Again, we have all of our wonderful participants. We have myself. My name is Paul Chin Jr. I'm a senior developer here at SLS Guru. We've got Almir, head of security and principal developer. We've got Jonathan, the amazing marketing boy wonder. And of course, Ryan, our leader and founder of SLS Guru. And this week's show, we're going to talk about whether or not things are worth it with the AI news that has come out in the last couple of days. We've got a couple of different stories to bring up. And I think this time we have an even more interesting dynamic piece that Jonathan has cleverly put together. Jonathan, you want to go over this new clock that you've kind of come up with?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. All right, guys. So let me switch over to the tab over here. So you're going to see it running up in the corner here. Here, I can make it a little bit bigger for right now. We have this website, Is It Profitable Yet? Which is an awesome thing that I kind of stumbled upon in the last 2 weeks, where someone is going through, or someone built and is tracking all of the spend and profit from major companies investing in AI right now. So you're going to go see through here, you have Amazon, Google, Meta, Oracle, and NVIDIA in the very bottom is really the only one who is profitable, but it's more like selling shovels during a gold rush, which I think we will get into. But what we're going to be looking at today is going to be the spent since the page load right here. We're going to have it up in the corner as a little tracker. So let me just get this restarted for us. And then we'll zoom on in. Highly technical right here.
All right. Yeah.
So you're going to see this little bar running, and then it'll just live up here in the corner for us. So we can watch that tick the entire time. All right.
If this was a cookie clicker game, it would be fun, right? Like you see number go up, like that's a great game. However, in real life, this is representing real life dollars and real life stuff being just burned up into the atmosphere. It's a little less entertaining, but a good reminder for basically our first story coming up. Why don't we bring up the story about the data centers getting built? I believe this one Almir had brought to us. Oh, that's the data centers where they had really like concerns about the water usage and electricity usage, and many people across this country and even overseas are pushing back against this gold rush, this big push for data centers to just get built, regardless of whether or not we really need them. Almir, you want to open us up and kind of talk about what you found here and what your thoughts are?
Yes, thank you very much, Jonathan and Paul, of course, for the great intro to this new show that we have here. Actually, we are continuing where we stopped last week. So the question is it really worth it? So everything comes down to the money. But really, we have another dimension here that it's becoming a hot topic nowadays. Yes, we are talking about the spending tokens. We are talking about the companies and enterprises spending a lot of money on tokens about the AI usage. But what are the consequences? So we are talking about green planet. We are talking about improving environment and whatnot. But suddenly there are investments in these huge data centers, or at least there is a promise of these huge data centers. And if you look into that top right corner, you will see how we burn that money that I don't believe exists, but maybe somebody can explain from where that money is coming from. So, but it's not about the Ponzi scheme. It's not about pyramidal structure of this fraud. It's about the environment. These data centers are using a lot of water. They have a huge environmental impact, and do we really need them? So what are we achieving? And now we have Amazon workers talking about that. Yes, rich people always talking about the environment, about everything, about the weather, but the thing is, people are starting to ask questions about this. So there is also a project here. I live in Bosnia. Um, that's close to Croatia, former Yugoslavia, Southeast Europe. And next to my country, there is a Croatia, and there is a promise of new data center, $50 billion worth, that is going to be built next year. So they signed contracts, they did some meetings, they did a lot of stuff, but suddenly people are started asking questions. Hey, what are you doing? Where the electricity is going to come from? How much water are we going to spend? Because the electricity needed for the data center is equal to electricity that now their capital Zagreb is using. So it's not only about it's not so that electricity needs to be produced, and in order to produce electricity, so we have chain reaction here. So does this really worth it? And what is the impact of these things? About money, we can talk about later about the burning tokens and everything. Now, I think it's. I would like to hear what do you think about these environmental impacts and companies that starts asking questions, even their employees, like those AWS Amazon employees mentioned in the article. So that's for me for starters. So just to open up discussion on this topic.
Yeah, I think Ryan, do you want to go over the some of the research that you had done about about data centers and just sort of like the napkin math of the water that you had found, napkin math of water usage that you had found? It was some big numbers, and um, I I was hoping you could kind of walk us through what you found, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see like whether it was in the inside of our internal Slack. We have our AI channel, which slowly turned to turn into the AI Psychosis. Man, this AI stuff is out of control and crazy. And then we branched it off to a to its own channel now. So it might take me a second to find it, but once I do, I'll definitely
Okay.
go into it. But
Yeah, not
yeah.
it was a wonderful little
Oh, I found it. Here we go.
yeah,
Okay.
more than just a thought experiment. You had,
Yeah.
found some numbers and plugged it into your own chatbot to do some napkin math there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I just read it off.
And that number in the corner just keeps on ticking.
That's true.
I think we had a
Yeah.
Okay,
comment.
so
Only that was our bank account right now.
yeah, so I think what's really interesting about the way why is there so much water usage is probably the first question. And there's a larger topic which Almir was sort of hinting at, which is, hey, when did the good guys become the bad guys? And you know, by association to the tech world, I definitely don't want to have the association of being the bad guy now just because we work with software and all the tech software giants basically threw out their morals. They're like, yeah, we don't have the proper setups to allow for closed cooling systems for these data centers. So why don't we just take all the fresh water, evaporate it to cool it from the cities that we're building the stuff out in? Let's find jurisdictions that are favorable, that give us tax breaks. And then through that process, if we don't have the electricity use either, then let's just leverage gas turbines. Let's use Generac generators. Let's use Caterpillar gas generators, and then let's just run these things 24/7. A lot of emissions, a lot of wasted water use. There are plans. I think I talked about in the last podcast. Microsoft has plans to switch to a self-cooling system, what they call like a closed loop system, but those won't go into production potentially till late 2027. And honestly, the something I guess we'll get into later, which is how close are we to the cliff of all of this, right? People are waking up more and more every day and realizing the cost benefit analysis isn't really as clear cut as it was sold to us as, and as the marketing would tell people. And also, there's so many abstraction layers as well, right? Like when you're building something out, especially if it's code, right? The thing that someone interacts with, which I'm sure everybody here, I'm going on a little tangent. I'll come back to the water in a second. But if I try to explain to somebody, what does SLS.guru even do? I'm like, well, have you ever bought you ever bought a train ticket? Have you ever used Netflix? Have you ever gone and bought something off of a website? All those systems in the background that allow for that to happen. That's sort of where we do things. But again, that's translating a lot of complexity and architecture and tons of layers into just a UI interface that they interact with. And so, when we get to this, which is why is it so hard to see whether or not it is worth it or not, because you have people that have never seen that, they've never coded in their life, but now they can do AI generated code. They look at the outcome. Hey, it did 20 files and 5,000 lines of code, and it appears to work. So what's the difference, right, between that and something that's in production and secure and safe and so on? And then it's really hard to measure it. And so why all this kind of connects back together is the amount of water usage that's happening, the amount of compute that's running, and the metrics that we have to actually know what is a good outcome or a bad outcome, or what that distribution is across that outcome in terms of how much is hallucination, how much is error, how much does it have to be reworked, et cetera. And then you have the economic side of it, which is the usage in itself creates more amount of, at least in, there's two splits here. One is API use. That's where we actually see the real token cost. And then you have the subsidized monthly sort of billing model that these companies have. And just to kind of give an idea there, and then I'll come back to water, is if you go directly to the API, like if I was going to build out a multi-agent system where I'm leveraging different AI agents for different tasks, I'm orchestrating them together, and I'm having direct API calls out to these models, and let's say out to Anthropic, well, the actual token use bill that I would get in that case is actually been shown just recently to be like 7 to 13 times what the actual monthly rate is for some of their monthly subscriptions. So when we talk about, like, if I had a $200 subscription, if I'm not going through that subscription, I'm going directly to the API and I'm making these requests, the bill could actually explode from $200 out to like $2,700. And that's insane, right? And so, yeah. Okay. So how does that come back to this?
That's just for like programmatic access, is what you're saying. Like the foundation providers know that that's where they can get the most money out of users, right? Is that programmatic access?
Yeah, and that's the only way to actually justify the idea of if they're profitable or not, or like what the real costs are. Because when you subsidize the cost underneath a monthly subscription, well, hey, it's like $200 for me to use it, and I can use it as much as I want. And if I love using, Claude Code, then I can run up a gigantic bill, but I'm only going to pay a capped fee of $200 a month. And so I can never fully see, am I spending 150 and they're making $50 on me, or am I spending $2,500 and I'm actually getting a really good deal, and I'm actually getting $2,300 worth of access. And so what it turns out to be is it's much more on the upper end than it is on the lower end, which means it's not they have to actually either drop the cost by magnitudes, which almost feels impossible, or they have to raise the prices. But I can tell you, similar when I used Manus with Meta, I was working through a project and I was trying to understand, could I build a slideshow builder out of this, leveraging Manus AI, which is multiple agents all working together. And then Manus got purchased by Meta, and it's kind of like the coordination layer. And I saw my bill explode, and I kept having to upgrade and upgrade and upgrade because I wanted to see how deep does this rabbit hole go. When do I figure out whether or not this is worth it, right? To avoid costing. And so, I finally get to the point where I'm paying Manus AI $2,000 a month, and then eventually I just have to cut myself off and be like, look, this is, and why did I end up stopping? Because after spending all of that money, I then looked at the outcome, and it turned out that it wasn't even referencing the data set that I had put in there. And so it was just hallucinating the entire time. And the fact that, you know, that's a thing is a whole nother topic. All right, but let me go back to the water. So basically to say the water usage is so high because it's not, you know, 1 gallon of water to one usable output. It's it's like thousands of potential outcomes. Not all of them are good. Some of them are really bad. Some of them have to be rerun over and over and over again. And there's so much waste. And then that's the real reason, is that if they would have done it, if they would have waited to improve everything before scaling this out and running all this crazy marketing that got everyone sort of hooked, or they would have actually built the more sophisticated data centers from the start. But the whole problem with it is everything just takes time, right? So the average data center build out being, you know, 12 months to 36 months. You just don't have time for this. And that's because so much money is being piled in. They need to see returns coming quickly. And I believe I heard Ed Zitron talk about this. He said, for this equation to make sense, Anthropic and OpenAI would have to become the size of Google, and be, I think, doing as much revenue as NVIDIA by 2030. So it's like, those are just impossible numbers. But let me actually go to the water use here. Okay, so total water footprint would be 83 million liters or 22 million gallons. And this was, let's see. So we are going to imagine $500 million was posted in terms of, so this is $500 million in spend. And so then we try to figure out sort of the reverse math there, which is you have $500 million in spend, how much water usage? Well, the first thing that we did was we went, okay, let's imagine that every single person got paid $150,000. And so that was a full year salary. If you take $500 million and divide it by 150,000, you get 3,300 people. And then the idea was, okay, if we have 3,300 people, that's a total equivalent amount. If we break this over 3 years, that's 1,100 people at 150,000 each. Or if it's a 10 years worth of salary, it's for 333 people. So, you know, that's a lot of money. I mean, just to kind of to magnify what we're talking about in terms of how many people's salary at 150,000. And just to re-say it, 10 years, 333 people all being paid 150K for 10 full years. And then as we get into it, so we assume a blended cost of $45 per 1 million tokens. And then we do the math of 500 million divided by $45, and we get 11.1 million units of 1 million tokens. So the math is crazy here. So the total tokens processed for $500 million is like 11 trillion tokens. So, I mean, it's just insane. But if you think about software is complex, and building software out and modeling the human brain, of course, it requires a lot of compute, like a ton of compute. And then what we did is we went, okay, let's assume that there's a input, there's thinking, and then there's a final output. And the final output is 10,000 tokens. Of course, it could be way more than this, right? So could be less, could be more, you know, I would say do your own math here. But if you take 11 trillion tokens and you divide that by 10,000 output tokens, we have 1.1 billion total queries that happen, okay? This is so $500 million, 1 billion queries. We have 11 million units of 1 million tokens, because that's how they're priced on every 1 million tokens. And it comes out to 1.1 billion queries times 75 milliliters of water. And your total water footprint for that is 22 million gallons. So just to kind of like re-say all that, $500 million for 22 million gallons of water is sort of what's being done there. And what we have is on-site data center cooling. And for that, it would be about 8 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth. And then if you have upstream power generation, this is important too, because you have the data center cooling side, but also the data center has to be powered by upstream electrical grids and so on. And those also use water. And so it's not just the data center, but it's actually where the electricity is being generated at. And so, yeah, All right, that's the rough of it,
Those
but I mean,
are
it's a lot.
Yeah, those are some really big numbers. And that 500 million, what's the time period on that original?
Yeah,
That's
let me
just for
see.
every 500 million in AI spend. And I believe I started seeing where even like Alphabet, Google's, controlling company, is looking to issue more stock in order to get in on the AI raise, because these numbers are huge, but there's only so much money that can come from investors, right? And Alphabet is moving as quick as they can to get in on this early, investment that comes from both the private, and then when things go public, where's all this extra money going to come from? It is at levels that we just have never seen before. I think the last big IPO was a big, I think it was like the Chinese, like Temu or something like that, and it was like 30 or 20 billion in an IPO.
I think it's
And
Alibaba.
Alibaba. That's right. Alibaba. It was Alibaba. That's correct, Jonathan. Thank you. It was Alibaba. It was like 20 or 30 billion. And now OpenAI wants to do 70 some billion on their own. Anthropic wants to do another 70 some billion. And now Alphabet wants to do 80 billion. I mean, these are just crazy numbers. And there it is. And we know that these data centers, they take time to build out, and everybody is trying to do this as fast as possible, only out of pure speculation. I think we are all pretty safe to say. And anytime we got ourselves just kind of calling out markets, and it's like, oh, this is insane. Like, is it at the top? Are we at the top? Is there still more to find? And that kind of brings us back to like is it worth it? Because Jonathan, pull up the Chipotle AI thing that I found. So Almir pointed out to me that this is not a new exploit, but this is another recent one that hasn't been patched and then was patched. But basically, in open code is like a router of sorts. It's a tool to allow you to pick any kind of model and run it locally. What the community has done has reverse engineered all the chat support bots that are on these corporate sites, like from Home Depot and Lowe's and McDonald's and Chipotle, reverse engineer their inference endpoints and plug them into this framework. Now, people have been asking support bots and doing like essentially like cross-site scripting, right? Asking the chat bot to do their Python to make Python programs for them. But to have it be such a concentrated effort by the community to like go and find these like open endpoints years later, now still people being able to find them, is kind of crazy. Ryan, I wanted to ask you, like, with this amount of huge compute and people kind of scrambling to find it wherever they can, like how are we supposed to respond to this kind of fervor for compute? Like, are we thinking, because if I have to lock down what the agent can do so much that it kind of stops being autonomous and is just, again, it's not a chatbot anymore. Now it's like the power in the model is asking it all kinds of crazy things, but people are now exploiting it to where we have to lock them down. And from a business standpoint, we have to lock them down to be completely safe. They're really not that innovative anymore. So is it really worth it? I guess I'll open that up to Ryan and then Almir.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good setup. I mean, I think when we think about productivity, oftentimes risk is sort of taken later. And so if we can move this thing forward faster than we should, and then, oh, wait, does this also, it's like, yes, you can, I don't know, you can blow up dynamite behind a ship or something to make it slightly faster. But I don't know, that's a lot of risk, right? In terms of, hey, what if we drop the dynamite on ourselves and we blow the ship up? So I would say that a lot of companies are, they're losing this essence in terms of what got them there. And I think this is it's a larger thing, which is there's a takeover in organizations of, I hate to say it because I have some friends that have MBAs and so on. So I'm not just, I don't want to say all MBAs are bad, but I'll just say this: there's people that are not understanding of the work at the lowest level of it, that are then managing others that are doing work. I feel like it creates this really weird detachment from reality, where then mixed in with like AI, it's hard for that person to then evaluate what is true and what's not true. And then they have the authority and the power to then push that from the top down on everyone else. And so it gets into this really weird area where they're not going to spend time researching it or trying it themselves. They're just going to read articles. They're going to hear other people's opinion who also just kind of read the title of something and it may or may not actually be true. But I think when you pull back the hood and you look underneath of all this stuff, there's so much involvement of the human throughout all of the process, right? And, I've seen decision making happen where it was sort of a side of, um, do we take it's a use case that makes a form make sense. So imagine a use case where a form makes sense. And really, what is a form? You have data input, you capture it, you store it somewhere, you give a response back. Maybe it's email, maybe it's a notification, maybe it's just saying, hey, we got your message, right? Super straightforward. You don't need to make it more complicated. And then the idea is, hey, what if we supercharge this with AI, right? Instead of them having to put it into a form that just works instantly, low, like super fast performance, no cost, nothing, no hallucination rate or anything. Why don't we have an AI bot talk to the person, try to gather those details from them, and then we can have it dynamically put it into some database or whatever else, right? And that whole thing just creates this massive mess, and it's all a bunch of spaghetti at the end of the day. And the reason why is you took something that's simplistic and works and solves a problem and you made it more complicated, but the layers of complicated doesn't fully make sense because we went from, oh, well, I got these 5 form inputs that I have to create, to now I just have this one. I just got this AI bot. It does everything. Like I don't have to think about those layers. And the reality is you absolutely have to think about those layers. We're just not anymore. Right. So we're just saying, hey, we'll just make it work. It'll figure it out. It'll get better over time. Right. I think that's the sort of, I heard Ed Zitron talk about this, which is if you remove things like future tense from when people are talking about AI, it becomes a lot more difficult to really understand the value proposition of it, because it's a lot of things like, if we're able to achieve this, and this, then it will make sense economically, right? If we're able to create artificial general intelligence, then at that point, it'll be able to replace entry level people at X job for X amount of money, and then we'll make money, they'll save money. Who cares about the humans? That doesn't matter. And who cares about the water use or, or anything else, right? But in that case, we do have a business model that functions, and so back to your question, risk, so on. I don't know. I don't think that it was factored in when all this started. I don't think it'll be factored in at all. And I think that every company that goes through this process, it's like that thing we talked about in the last podcast episode. It's dangerous, right? It's like, they say don't shoot the messenger, but the messenger often gets shot, right? And so, I mean, even us doing this podcast is a relatively not dangerous thing, but it's a very different thing, because we're supposed to some degree, especially in the role that I am with the company, I'm not supposed to really talk about these type of topics, right? You're supposed to sort of be like the silent party in the background. But I just think it's so bad and it's so dumb what's happening, where it's like I think all of us are in the same boat where like we feel obligated to talk about it, because it's really hard to find material where someone's questioning like the entire thesis of all this, right? So
I
I
think
don't
we
know.
do have to talk about it, and this is a good opportunity to kind of work through the uncertainties that all of us are having, because it does create anxiety and FOMO, like we had talked about last time. But Ryan, I think you just mentioned something important, which is the un the unrealized cost and risk of skill atrophy as well. Like we are outsourcing a lot of this thinking. Like we used to just make forms, and it took me forever to understand what a web form is, a get and a post. Like those are then fundamental to how things are built on the internet. But we forget about all that now and just create a single open socket to a chatbot endpoint and send stuff in and wait stuff for it to come back without any real guarantee of a result. Almir, do you think we got any skill atrophy going on in the market right now with you know, what we're seeing?
Oh yeah. So not really at this point for the people who are already into this for many years and who learned a lot of things along the way. Maybe they will lose the skills. You know, like not really the skills, but you know, if you are like in a sports and you are a top athlete and when you finish your career you are not practicing anymore and you know you haven't forgot how to play, you still have that, you know, you still have those skills, but you cannot run anymore and you don't have your teammates, you know, to pass the ball or whichever sports you are playing. So during that time, when you retire or stop using those muscles, they will atrophy. So same goes with the brain. If you stop programming, so I used to I have an example. So I used to program in a Delphi language that was awesome, that is still awesome, but I haven't made anything useful, or I haven't used it for many years. And if I open now the IDE of Delphi, I'm not really sure how much time I will need to recall everything and the syntax and how things supposed to work. So the people today, what is the point of this? So the people today are using and rely on AI, and they're stop writing actual code. And well, and what is even more dangerous is that they'll stop reviewing the code, because what can possibly go wrong, right? The real danger actually is are the next generations that are about to come. So they don't see the worth in and I spoke with some young people, you know, like they're talking, okay, why do I need to learn programming, because AI can write the code for me? Well, I commented on our internal Slack a few days back, we had some discussion about that, and Ryan mentioned thing about the burning tokens and the costs about of salary and everything. So the main narrative of these companies, and this is all closely related to the question, even though there's so many things to mention, but I will try to be quick with this. So um, the thing is, the main narrative of these companies that now everyone can write the code magically. Yes, that's true. Write the prompt. Yeah, write me something really complex that you know, some senior stuff struggling to write, and you will get your code. Write me this, write me that, do this, do that. Fine. It was never about writing code. Code is only part of it. To make something meaningful of that code, you need to understand the system. You need to learn things. You need to understand how computers works, how to manage memory. How would you know? Is your model hallucinating? Is that code okay? Or you're just getting some gibberish and you're happy with it? If you don't have the skills, if you don't know the system, if you don't know the architecture, if you don't know the background stuff, you cannot steer, because AI is still a tool. That is the tool that professionals are using, and that is perfectly fine. But we cannot rely on AI to solve, you know, all the problems we have. So in order to make something useful, we still need people, we still need humans, we still need young people to learn, next generations to learn how to program, to learn how to write code, to know how to architect systems. Then the AI will be useful. And you see the results. So the Chipotle, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, article that that you brought here is the consequence. And that is not the only example. We had to talk about the AI security and the stuff that people are doing without realizing what they are doing. So if you use this tool recklessly, if you are using it without any critical view of it, without code reviews, you are in real danger. So the Chipotle, this will cost money because the people will start playing, and the AI gave the ability to people with less or no skills at all, and even to young immature people to play around, to act as hackers and use these tools. So they can burn tokens. There are security issues. There's so many dangers if you rely on this without any cross-checking and stuff, without any guardrails and security controls. Uh, so it can cost you a lot. So the question is it worth it? It's not about environment. So if you are not you, but generally speaking, if you are one of the guys talking to the audience that doesn't care what's going to happen in 100 years or in 50 years from now, I don't only care today or tomorrow and what's going to happen this summer. Well, what's going to happen is that you may lose job, not because of AI is writing code instead of you, it's going to replace you. No, because your company may go bankrupt because of the lawsuits, or because you burn the tokens. You may get fired because of that, not because you are going to be replaced by the smarter machine. And maybe, but I have something more, but I'll give you a
What
chance to
really
speak.
got me recently, Almir, was a couple of talks from the Anthropic people, from people building Claude Code. And they were going over how they build agents in such a way where their goal is not to review any code. Like the actual goal is to not look at code, is to make code without looking at it. And you know, I've heard from many seniors over the last couple of months, they're just like, I'm showing up just to fix AI bugs. Like, I'm just there fixing the problems that AI has created. And the people on the quote forefront are pushing, don't bother looking at the code, just keep generating more. And we have to realize that like it's in their best interest to get us to not look at what it's producing, right? To just say, yeah, okay, that's good. I'm going to write my prompt in such a way that I don't ever have to look at the code. And that seems like AI psychosis to me. I don't think that's really um the output we want. We want correct code, we want correctness. The I don't know, you know about Bun. Everybody, do y'all know about Bun, the JavaScript runtime? It's small. Anthropic bought it for some reason, and the Bun team had written it in Zig, a systems language. Then when they got bought by Anthropic, they threw Claude at it and rewrote it in Rust. After they rewrote it, it went from like I think it went from 700,000 lines or 600,000 lines to almost a million lines of Rust code. And they said that it's fully compatible. The rewrite, only took 2 weeks. I don't know how many tokens they spent to remake it. But the community looked at it, and the biggest tell was that Rust is supposed to be this memory safe language, and the AI created classes where it was just constantly saying like, "Oh, don't worry about this. This is memory unsafe, but don't worry about it." It was basically going through the linter and just saying okay to all these really dangerous things.
Yeah,
But
like
because
we
there
had.
was so much
Okay.
of it, like they just let it all go. And the community is like, what is going on? Like, why did you do this?
So if you just recall, or like what happened with the code reviews, why we had all these linters for not just for JavaScript but for JavaScript specifically, and when people start, putting, for example, in ESLint, you put ESLint ignore next line, ignore next line,
Yes,
ignore
yes,
next line,
exactly.
just to get rid of the warning. That will not that will not solve the problem. That will just ignore the problem exactly as it is. So now we have AI ignoring these problems, and okay, fine, that's how it works. But the worst thing is that the people are ignoring this problem. So security was always a game of cat and the mouse. So the tools malicious users or attackers are improving. So the security improving. They are trying to exploit security people, trying to fix that, and that is a never-ending story. Now with the AI, they got the upper hand, especially with Mythos report and those kind of things that encouraged people to use AI for many kind of things. Uh, but the worst thing is that people are not looking into the code that is being generated, and they blindly believe and trust into everything, and that will cost money. So if you don't care about anything about the privacy, about whatever, if you are running a company, if you work for a company, you care about the money, you will lose money like this. That's my biggest point.
Yeah, I just want to jump in, and I've been working on, I mentioned it last time. I've been working on this trading platform. I've been fascinated by this concept of systematic algorithmic trading, just trying to see if I can find patterns in the noise of it. I think many have gone down that path, and many have, been burnt out from it, or maybe they learned something, maybe they didn't. But I heard this company called Renaissance Technologies, and they had on average 66% annual returns for like 30 years. And the leader of it was Jim Simmons. And as I went down this pathway of trying to leverage AI to help me in terms of understanding how to do this, it really sunk in after a while where I was like, these guys did all this with none of this. It's like, I'm like, what is really going on? Like, it seems so complex. Of course AI would be able to help you in terms of, the markets and so on. And then I started realizing, it's just, I'm comparing two numbers together. I'm doing like, is this one greater than that one? Is this one less than that one? And I'm like, oh, this is just normal programming. There's nothing, it's like you pull back all these layers of complexity. And so to go to another point, it's a weird situation because it's something I'm actively doing in my free time. I'm using Cursor, and I'm leveraging Opus 4.8 at the moment for the coding tasks. And then as I run through and I come up with an idea, what I'm seeing now is I've got the platform up. I had massive hallucinations before, which is the whole reason why I even built a UI. Because at first I was like, oh, let me just take a bunch of this data from a financial data set and then run it using Cursor and Claude, and then just have it try to tell me where there's correlation, right? And then I realized, oh, it hallucinates everything. This is completely unreliable. And so I was like, okay, I need to create a UI just so that I can see what's happening, right? And then through that process, I've incrementally learned, oh, this wasn't actually happening the way that I thought it was happening. Oh, this average that it was talking about actually forgot a few key numbers. So the average was just wrong. And I was working off that assumption for multiple days. And then so now where I'm at with it is I've got something that relatively works. I can run a simulation across some companies and try to make some, artificial trades and then see what the outcome is. But a lot of it is just my own brain having to think of what to do next. And there's no real way for me to get that assistance, right? I mean, the only thing that I can do is I've got a bunch of books around me. I've just been buying a lot of books. What I found in this process is like the best information for anything is still in books. And this gets into an idea around humans wrote books. They distilled years of experience, in some cases 30 plus years of experience, distilled it down into 300 pages of information, very dense. It all flows together like a story. Everything referenced leans on the next thing. They bring in outside resources. Obviously now people are using AI to write books, so don't buy any new books because unless they're really valid, because likely they're just leveraging AI to write some slop and then they're throwing some title on top of it. But the ones before 2021 to 2019, those are really good. And also, there's another side, which is they were written by a human, and humans, we have a lot that we're capable of that we probably don't understand, which is a whole separate rant. But in terms of information processing, we don't have infinite capacity to process information, right? We cap out, right? And I read a book called Deep Work, I think it was, and they talked about even Nobel Prize winners only maybe maximum have 3 to 4 hours worth of deep work, deep, uninterrupted flow state level work, right? And so why the books are relevant here is because you talk to an AI or LLM, they give you a flood of information. It doesn't stitch together very well. There's not really a flow to it, and it's not to the level or that you could potentially understand. They don't really level set either, and so when I pick up a book, though, it's like the person wrote it with the understanding of the capacity of the human brain in a way that I can understand it and I can process it and I can store it in my memory, right? And so that's part of it. And then I want to talk about something else as well, which is skill atrophy, but it's related to learning new things, right? There's a process in terms of actively trying to learn something or do something. The action of the doing part of it, of the practicing and so on, is essential, right? If we just get the answer, half of that equation is missing, right? And I think more than just having the answer that we're seeking, it's the process of learning where we actually get all of the benefit, and those neural connections are built up over time and they connect to different things, right? And so it's like, I was thinking about it in terms of golf the other day, which is, let's say I go and I try to hit at a driving range and I'm just hitting a golf ball. It's like if someone came up and told me, that and then just moved my body into the exact position without telling me anything, and then I hit and it worked out, I would have no idea, like what are the mechanics, how did this happen, what took place. And it's like the reality is at least when I learned to program and there was no AI when I was doing it, you just got to work really hard. You got to go through the moments where you're on the floor going, why did I choose this? This is way too difficult. I remember when AppSync came out for AWS and I was asked to build out a GraphQL group payment thing. It was like, imagine like multiple people in a group having to do payments and they want to share that. And AppSync had just come out only maybe like 3 months before. This is like late 2018 or something. I don't know, 2018. Yeah, somewhere around there. And the documentation was non-existent. CloudFormation support with infrastructure as code was almost non-existent. And there was no real best practices or anything. And you just have to bang your head against the wall. And then through that process, you build up such a resilience to be able to understand how to debug things, how to navigate the Amazon Web Service console, how to build things out, leveraging it. You have to patch all these little gaps everywhere. Now I don't know if people are really going to experience that. And it's like, man, but then also to another point, and then I'll stop talking. It's not real. It's not real because the cost equation is not real. I was talking about this earlier with the Manus thing. If I had known up front this was going to cost me $2,500 or whatever, I probably wouldn't have done it, right? If it like for what, right? Obviously, I had this illusion in my mind that I had to break, and so obviously everyone has to go through that. Some people never will, but that's because they never do anything anyways, right? They're 10,000 feet and they never actually do any work at all. So it's like they have no ability to even understand if what they're talking about is true or not. They don't really care, right? Somebody else figure it out, right? And so going through that, break the illusion right now. If Anthropic tomorrow repriced everything to token-based pricing and was charging users $2,700 versus the $200 and it wasn't capped, I think the whole thing blows up almost immediately. So I'll just stop there.
Something that I was thinking about when I was listening to Ryan talk about, having someone come up and tell you how to golf, right? If you just had a golf club that did it for you, you wouldn't be Tiger Woods, right? I am reminded of kind of like a practical example. I have cousins and family who live in other parts of the world, and they it's more common to have like nannies or maids. They call them nannies where they're at, right? People who will cook, clean, do everything for you, fold laundry, iron, things like that. And when they came to visit, they were really surprised that I knew how to cook, and I cooked them a meal, right? And they go, how did you do this? It's simple. It's just an omelet or whatever I made, and they were talking about how they had never had to cook, right? Like, oh, I just have my nanny do that for me. But an experience that they're having now is, now that they're growing older and leaving home, a lot of my family, they don't know how to cook for themselves. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to fold or cook or clean. These kind of basic, everyday, essential things that you need to function. And it was a kind of a shock to me, a shock to them, that I didn't have a nanny growing up, where, like, because I'm from the U.S. and, you guys have so much money there. Why don't you just have someone do it for you, right? And, I told them I enjoy cooking. And they're like, you enjoy doing something that, we pay 4 cents to this person to go do? Why? What's the joy in that, right? And there's like an aspect of I don't know, being alive, where you kind of need to suck at something to be good at something. And I feel like the meditation behind practicing an art or a skill, or cooking in this case for me, was really meditative. It's something that I didn't take as like a output. For them, cooking and food was a means to survive. So why would I invest time and effort into something where it's not meaningful? But to me, it is meaningful. It is something that I think you can't just put a blanket, like, oh, food is just something you do to survive, right? Like, it is my art. And I think, in a way, when I think of skill atrophy and AI and everything like that, when it comes to like human knowledge, coding, like we're talking about, like art, music, even like attention and discipline, I think, what Ryan was saying is that if you're just given the answer, or you're just given like the output, or like you turn everything into, well, is the time and effort I'm putting into this worth it, when I can just have someone like make it for me, right? It leaves you in the same boat, where now, if you do need those skills, or you do need something, or you're on your own and you're not able to rely on an AI, are you able to do that thing, right? And being in marketing, I see a lot of people post, AI written things on social media, like articles that are just AI written, and a part of AI where that's not part of coding, but much like coding, a lot of it is editing, right? I feel like you need to be able to review through your code to make sure it's not gonna break. And with writing, you need to write through and you need to edit through. You need to still have your own voice, right? Something that was commented. Actually, I'm going to show this really quick on our LinkedIn post. Oh, it's a little big. Sorry. This guy Ivan. I hope you're watching, Ivan. Hi, I'm using your quote here. At the very bottom, in my opinion, some people can use it to be better. This is AI. Learn more, produce faster. But the majority, they lose their own thoughts, own logic, and identity. And I feel like that's something that you really get with the use of AI too much, is you lose that logic and identity, which makes so many things so essential to being alive, right? Plus, you end up making slop that people don't like, and it uses over 2 cups of water, which kind of brings it back to there's an aspect of this where it's not just, I'm just gonna just use AI because I want to have an output, or I have this input, I have this idea, and I just want to see what happens with it. It's not just free. It's not like a free lunch, like I mean, like that term. There's no such thing as free lunch. It uses water. It uses electricity. It uses other people's thoughts and opinions, because AI just scraped together amalgamation of everything that's already been written and thought of. AI isn't coming up with its own thoughts and opinions. It's using what it finds already, right? So you're not like, oh man, I'm trying to think of this musical composition. Let me just use AI to create something, and I will take credit for it because I'm the creator of it. No, it's just taking bits and pieces from what's already existing, right? You're not creating something new. You're just kind of forming it together. Sorry. I think an example.
The best parts, taking statistically the best parts of the songs or music or notes.
It's like it's what the algorithm thinks that people like, and so it scrapes it together and puts it together, right? And at the end of the day, who owns that, and why are we so okay with it kind of diminishing what music should be, in my opinion?
Jonathan, did you have an article about Spotify and AI? Is that yours?
I did, actually.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into this article here.
Yeah, so what I brought today, just for everyone to take a quick gander at, is that Spotify and Universal Music is moving to have a paid service on their platform where users can take, existing artists' music and remix it with AI, and that will become a new type of music, or they can have it on their playlist, right? Um, and I think there's a couple things about that I think is a little strange. One is who wants that? Who wants to go? I'm going to take this song I really like and I'm going to like blend it through this AI and make it worse. But maybe that's just my opinion on the quality of AI music, right? Maybe some people are like, I really want to hear this song sped up and then spoken in Spanish or something. Maybe that's what it can do. I don't know. But I think what is really kind of insidious about this, without really, they don't really talk about this, is who owns the music afterwards, right? I feel like large companies, like there are copyright protections and stuff in place, and Spotify does say, hey, if you're not okay with your music being used, we won't have it be a part of this program. You have to be a part of the Universal Music Group and you have to sign this agreement. But like we've seen with a lot of other kind of AI companies, things that are promised aren't always what is delivered, right? An AI company can say, "Don't worry, we won't use your data, or we won't break into your your code base, or whatever the technical jargon is, you guys. We're not going to steal that, or we're not going to delete your entire database. Don't worry, your entire thing is safe." Oopsies, I guess I did do that. Would you like to learn more about what that means? And so if that could happen, these artists are at risk, right? And you AI generate and remix somebody's song. Now who owns that song, right? I feel like it's Spotify who owns that song, and so they make the money off of it, which is kind of this kind of circle of like they're pushing it so much because they can now, instead of paying the artists whose music is on the platform, they can say, hey, this is an AI remix thing. It doesn't belong to you. It's our thing. So we're going to make the ad revenue on it. And sorry, oops, we used your music even though you agreed not to. Sue us, right? Like they have infinite money. Who's going to win? A small artist or Spotify, right? So that's kind of why I brought it in. There's like so many aspects of that where it's like, is that worth it really, guys? Is that really, if you're going to take the time to remix a song you like, just learn to remix. Just learn to do it. Audacity's free. Just go and be bad at it for a while, and then eventually you won't be as bad. So sorry, my little Spotify rant. I saw that a couple of days ago or like a week ago, and I was like, that is so ridiculous to me. But
I was going to jump in and comment on exactly what you ended up getting to, which is, and it sounds like a money ploy, right? Like you just take all this good music that people like that are on your platform, so you have all the metrics around it, and then you just remix those, maybe through your own accounts, and then you have the complete control of the ads and so on. You can redivert all of that money over to you, and it just sounds like, man, it's like I don't know. I wanted to go to something else that you talked about, which is authentic voice and communication. And when we talk about skill atrophy, we're talking about coding and so on, but it's really everything, because it's not just programmers that are leveraging these LLMs and AI and so on, but it's people are using it for communication, for emails, for writing books, for making music, for speeches, for everything, right? And it's so dangerous because, as was mentioned earlier around the averages side, if all this is, what do you say, amalgamation? What did you say? Amalgamation of all this data. It's also pre-existing, right? So when we think about what are breakthroughs, well, breakthroughs are taking something and potentially breaking the norms and breaking what people are used to doing to then do something that's different. But if everyone is just using the average of all of this, right? It's like, are you really going to be able to take something a little bit further? And so I have an example where we had request for proposal. So request for proposal is basically a company comes to us and they want a proposal done, so we write it up and so on. And man, I spent so much time writing and editing, and I forgot how long it takes to do it was like 7 pages or 8 pages worth. And I mean, I probably spent, it'll sound insane if people don't write and but it was like 12 to like 18 hours worth over like multiple days of writing, editing, rewriting, editing, because I wanted, like, the second that I modified one paragraph, I was like, oh, now every other paragraph has to be at this equal level of quality. So then I'm like, okay, well, I can't just have one good paragraph and then a bunch of not good paragraphs. And then you have to go back over and you have to read through the transitions between different paragraphs and the flow of communication. Do you have analogies that you're bringing in? Are they powerful? Because speech, obviously, if you can create visuals in people's mind, it's easier for them to remember it. And so going through that process and doing that over multiple days, and but it's worth it. It's worth it. That's the whole thing. It's like when we think about is AI worth it? It's like, I mean, what are you? Are you BlackRock? You know what I mean? Are you a BlackRock, CEO or something? I don't know. It's different. Are you an individual person? Even if you were the BlackRock CEO, I would tell you that in your own personal life, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And I think that, aside from using it for helping research, or, I'm using it for this side project, as I said, for generate some code, then see the UI update, and then think through whether or not that idea even makes sense. And if it doesn't, scrap it and just keep going through that process. But the ideas are coming from me, right? I'm not leveraging AI to give ideas or to influence it all. And a long time ago, I read a book. It's called, this is it. It's called Essentialism. So my book is in bad condition because I've had it for a long time, but this is a really good book. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, yeah, okay, Essentialism. Anyways, so it talks about less but better, and the concept is that you got to clean up your environment. And deep work talks about this as well, that I mentioned earlier. Your environment is so important, getting the noise out, right? And I feel like right now there's so much noise, but what doesn't have noise? A book and a piece of paper and a pen. Just cut out all of it. Just buy a book around the thing that you want to learn about, and just sit there with it and let your brain put together the connections and formulate that, because it's so important, especially because we're in survival mode right now. And I just want to, almost like throw the alert up as if it's an earthquake, right? The amount of people that are relying on these systems and overly relying on them and communicating with them daily as if it's like their best friend, right? The impact that that's going to have neurologically, I think, is going to be dramatic. And the impacts of that will be, right now we're in that transitionary period where you go back 6 months, it wasn't the case, but now it is, right? And so if we go 1 year forward, 3 years forward, 5 years forward, 10 years forward, it's like we're survival mode, because we need to keep our intellectual capacity and our cognitive ability and our ability to learn and do things without the AI generated slop and so on. Because if you lose it, you're completely dependent. And the only business model that allows these companies to actually operate is the removal of jobs, right? The more dependent and docile and so on you become, the easier you are to replace. And it's so twisted. It's just, man, I mean, like, the people that created this, that said that they were for like saving the planet and humanity and all this, like, yeah, kick rocks. I hope that I hope anybody that's listening to this takes that seriously, which is like, yeah, reading books, it feels like it's outdated and so on, but it's really worth it. And taking notes by hand and paper and having those connections happen physically is extremely important. I don't want to be like, go out and touch grass, but
Read maxing.
read maxing and just being present, be present in the moment as much as possible, and try not to, take stuff for granted, because like right now is so critical and there's so much noise and people are devaluing themselves. And also everyone, people are celebrating when certain things happen that are, dramatic. Like if you think about the actual consequence of things, these are dramatic consequences. And that gets past the productivity side, whether or not it's actually useful in reality in terms of these systems. It's a whole separate thing, but more just on an individual level. At least in myself, I've ordered more books than I've ever ordered recently. And I'm spending more time trying to be offline when I can. Like, let's say it's like a Saturday or something, just turn my phone off and just be present with like my dogs and my family and so on. And like that, and it's needed, especially now. And with this podcast, we have to constantly be up to date in terms of what's going on in the world. So yeah, it's important.
unless the books are written by AI.
Yeah, while you were describing this dependency, Ryan, I was thinking of just Wall-E, like the Pixar movie, and the humans in the future that live on the cruise ship, and everything's taken care of for them, and they can't do anything, and they have to have a little plucky robot come and save them from themselves. Maybe that's us. Maybe we're the plucky little robots to save people from themselves. And with that, it's been an hour. We've had such an amazing chat this week. Lots of good stories that have come across the desk. I think the overall message from today's show is it worth it? Only if we put people back at the center, right? None of this is worth it unless we put people at the center. Ryan mentioned people that write books. They are written for people instead of an AI writing for some generic outcome, right? It's not, the AI can't guide us to any new level. Only humans can guide us to the next new level. And with that, I think we are good to close out the show for this week. And we will be back in another 2 weeks with whatever the AI Psychosis news feed throws at us. And we'll be able to hash it out, talk about it, and feel a little better about ourselves afterwards. I know I feel a little bit better thinking about, yeah, we got to stay human in all of this.